Good evening. Happy New Year to everybody, and welcome to the first meeting of 2019, the Truckee Town Council of January 8th. Judy, may we have the roll call, please?
Yes, Councilmember Klofstad.
Here.
Vice Mayor Goodwin.
Here.
Mayor Chairman.
Here.
Councilmember Abrams.
Here.
And Councilmember Pallavi.
Here.
Thank you.
And I'd like to ask Vice Mayor Goodwin to introduce his special guest here tonight.
As some of you may have noticed, we have an extra human up here on the dais. Jesse is a student at CELS, the Sierra Expedition Learning School, and he is, as a school project, they have to job shadow someone in the community, and he wanted to job shadow a town council member. And I said, come right along. So, future council member in training. All right, look at that.
Well, welcome, Jesse, and if we get too out of line up here, you can put us back into line. All right, so first off, going to open this up, our first meeting again of 2019. Looking forward to a very productive year with our new council and with all of you. So going to open this up for public comment, and this is an oh, gosh, wow, not off to a great start. Please join me and our new council in the Pledge of Allegiance before we get started. Thank you for that. That is the only mistake I'm going to make all year. So, all right. Public comment. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to provide comment on anything that is not listed on the agenda tonight. You'll have 3 minutes, and to please state your name. So if there's anyone who would like to comment on anything not on the agenda, please go ahead and step forward.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Ledke, and I would like to address the Town Council and the Town of Truckee regarding the sled hill that's across from the East Gateway. I happen to work there in one of the offices, and I don't know if the town has ever considered maybe closing that off until they develop something that has parking. Right now, what's been happening is people have been taking our parking for up to 2 hours at a time. And also the trash that is left on our property, in the front of our property, all along the road, as well as in the parking behind us. They had to hire our management company to come in. I'm sorry, I'm never nervous until I get to the microphone. They had to hire the management company to come and do a thorough cleanup. And so I sit and I watch it all day long. They also are coming into all of our businesses and using our restrooms. And it's just a problem. It's a problem watching them with all their families cross the street and there's no crosswalks. And then on the other side of the street, there's no parking anywhere. There's signs all across the street that say no parking anytime. So of course they're taking all of our parking. So I know that as a management company of the building, that they could choose to put up signs that say no parking and pay for those. And we could choose to have signs made and put them on all our buildings that say, you know, bathrooms not for public use. But it doesn't seem to be our problem there in our office building. So I'm just asking that the town would maybe consider, until they're able to develop that properly and have parking and staff it with people that can keep it clean, that they would consider, you know, maybe putting up signs that say no trespassing, and that there would be a fine if they did trespass, and blocking it off until such a time that it's appropriate. Thank you for your time. And I have some pictures that I took if the council would like to see those.
Thank you, Rachel. As you know, we can't take specific action on your comment tonight, but really appreciate the feedback. And there is some planning in the works for that particular site, for the MacGyver
I saw
Dairy.
that.
You may be aware of that. And I don't know if Jeff, you want to provide a few comments or thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the comment, and we agree with all of those comments, which is why over the past year we've had a master planning effort on that site. And that effort is concluded. It went to council, Nick, about 2 months ago, probably, November. And included in that master plan includes parking on the correct side of the street, the side that would be safe for people. It includes trash and additional trash management and pickup. It might include restrooms. That could be the phase 2. There's a kind of a phase 1, phase 2, but it is in the phase 2 possibility. It does include the idea of having crosswalks to safely get people across. It also includes additional protection for the wetland, because the wetland is actually getting restoration project, which will actually happen before any of these kind of park-like improvements. And it includes trying to move the locus of activity from the current somewhat steeper hills that put people in the middle of the wetland and the creek, at least in the spring and early part of the winter, move them down further down the hill and try to encourage that and try to discourage some sled use in that upper part. So there is a plan in place. We are planning on putting it in the budget for this coming year. Which means, a year and a half or 2 years before actually anything would get done. So it may not quite work with your timing, but there is a plan in place that we worked on, and we worked on it with community. We had conversations actually with each of the property owners and the businesses there at one point during that process, and had a couple of surveys and other kinds of things. So we feel like we're on the way there. We hadn't planned in the interim to do fencing or trespassing signage, or that wasn't at least part of what we talked about at council. So
Okay.
That's what's in the works.
And currently there is a trash receptacle located in the meadow, I believe, and we're managing that. Are we managing that as a town?
Yeah, and I think, Nick, you put up a orange fence at one point for people to throw broken sleds. I don't know if that's still true, but still up there. Okay. So yeah, we do a very modest amount of management. And we've had conversations with the Rec and Park District, as per council's direction, a couple of months ago, to see if they might have some interest, when it does become an actual kind of park. I use that term. I'm not, kind of an open space. Yeah. And there's other pieces to it, including interpretive signage and a little trail, which is more summertime as opposed to sled time use, to try to make more of the ecosystem restoration project that the Watershed Council will be doing, I believe, starting in the spring. I'm pretty sure that's when they'll be kicking off the actual improvements to the stream and the wetland.
Okay, thank you. Rachel?
And my time's up, I know, but on the pictures I showed, like the vehicles that park right in front of our office even, literally there for over 2 hours. But also the trash, like what I showed you, like they use all our trash cans and everything's just overflowing and the trash is just everywhere. So we show up to work and it just looks like a bomb went off. So I'm asking that maybe they would consider not paying for a fence to block it off. I think if there was just signage with, a fee that would be a fine that would be charged and that it's closed for whatever period of time. So anyway, thank you.
All right, well, maybe we'll plan to have some follow-up at the staff level and talk further about what can be done in the interim ahead of the larger master plan coming into place to improve the existing situation. Okay, any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Eric Koistinen. I'm the Truckee Library branch manager, and I just wanted to update you all and let you know what's going on at the library. We have a few programs coming up. Right now we have the Winter Reading Challenge. It started back in December, but it goes through March 3rd. Young readers can pick up a reading log and earn rewards along the way, and then there'll be an invitation for people who finish, for the young readers who finish at the Winter Reading Challenge party, and that'll be sometime in the spring. The library has also joined forces with the Humane Society of Truckee Tahoe to bring the Read Up for Fun program. It's where children can read to trained therapy dogs, and that's on Wednesdays from 4 to 5 p.m. And there's also crafts during that time, so from 4 to 5. And there's also a seasonal craft program every Monday from 4 to 5. And it's just little decorations that children can make. And that's on Mondays from 4 to 5. I'm also working on something called Libraries Helping Immigrants. That's in conjunction with the USCIS. And we have like a civics and citizenship toolkit that can be checked out. And we're planning on starting a conversation club with our literacy program. And we'll be focusing on the USA Learns website, and just to help have libraries help immigrants. And that's in conjunction with the Butte County Libraries and Sacramento County Office of Education. We also have Date with the Database, where we show patrons how to access our language and job databases, and that's on our digital resources page. And that'll be Tuesdays. So that first one was today, actually, then February 12th, March 12th, and April 9th. And those are just some of the things that are going on. And I can leave some, some brochures on the back table, if that's okay. All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate the update on the library. What is the library's website?
It's mynevadacounty.com/library.
Okay, so that's for the whole system, but
That
for
is,
Truckee,
yeah.
Truckee specifically, is there a site?
You can find Truckee's calendar on that site, and it's kind of, you can filter out that way. I think you click select all, it'll deselect everything, and then you can just click on Truckee, and then it'll show Truckee's events.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it. All right. Any additional public comment or perhaps council comment?
Would you like me to hop up to the podium for this one?
You can stay where you are.
All right. I wanted to make a public comment on a topic I'm sure top of most people's minds if you tried to get anywhere in town on Sunday. Sunday was a particularly memorable traffic day. So first I want to just commend all of our public safety, both Town of Truckee and CHP, for keeping everyone safe. There were no major injuries or fatalities of any kind. And the road crews and the police, and particularly our volunteers, worked extra hard. One of the reasons we didn't have volunteers out helping on Sunday as much as we might have is that they worked really hard Friday and Saturday, and these folks are volunteers. But our police chief even headed out himself on Sunday afternoon to help direct traffic, so thank you, Rob. As I was sitting at home fairly sick, one of the things I did was put up a simple survey out on the internet asking people how long it took them to get through town. I got 230 responses. I wanted to update everyone on what that looked like. It's very informal and unscientific, but of the 230, 100 people spent 3 hours or more in their cars. Most of those were from the ski resorts to Truckee neighborhoods, but some of them were headed to the hospital, and some of them were simply getting home from the grocery stores. 35% of respondents said this was in their top 5 worst Truckee traffic experiences, and 39% additionally said it was the worst ever. So if you put those two together, 75% said it was either the worst or the top 5 worst. So I think it was a particularly memorable day. And then I asked for sort of anything else to add. Somebody labeled this, I quite like this, the occasional catastrophe, which I think is a good name. And I still consider myself a fairly recent resident here. Don't pretend that this has any kind of silver bullet, but I do think that I would offer that this is something where we can make some improvements. Specifically, I think that the state and the CHP can offer more clarity on when I-80 is temporarily closed versus it's going to be closed for a while. I understand they're hesitant to say it's actually closed, but if they did that, it would give everyone waiting for it to open better information, hopefully incentive to get off of the Truckee roads. I think that we can learn from Colorado and the I-70 corridor. I think there's better digital signage and better notifications and warning systems there that state has invested in. That all of this is probably a place for Truckee to be more vocal to our state leadership and state representatives. I think is something we should consider. But in general, most people agreed that if there's any way to have more people directing traffic and more ways to separate out interstate from local traffic, it would probably be better, although it's never going to go away completely. So that's what I got.
Any other thoughts from the dais on last Sunday? I have to admit, I was holed up at home in Glenshire, aware of the weather and what was going on, and went out for a Nordic ski. So didn't experience any of that, but was very aware of it later in the day through social media. Wondering if Rob or Chief Letwich or Jeff, if you have any thoughts about the weekend or anything you want to share.
I have all kinds of thoughts. But what's appropriate for this forum might be limiting those bit. Yeah, so no, certainly an unprecedented day. I mean, anecdotally sitting with Caltrans supervisors and CHP personnel and just our own staff who've been here for an extended period of time. Beyond, I kind of still consider myself a neophyte in this, been here since 2010, but all of them, despite the fact that all acknowledge this is something that happens on holiday weekends, also noticed that this was a particularly congested departure. And I think there was a lot of variables there. We did manage to be very proactive towards the end of the day. That wasn't necessarily from a traffic gridlock management technique. It became a public safety emergency when we realized that I-80 was going to remain closed likely overnight and putting people in their cars, call it 18 plus hours in some scenarios, and that's not something we were capable of dealing with. So for their own good, we forced everybody to basically flush the streets of Truckee eastbound on I-80 at various times with different techniques. But I'm sure that upset a lot of people. We're obviously concerned about making sure that people have the quintessential Truckee experience while they're here. But there was several people and several significant pipelines, and Truckee is the collection point for all those. And so as we move forward, I think some of the takeaways and some things that we really want to focus on is better preventative communication. So not trying to communicate at the time of the event. Once people are here, queued up in line and on our roadways, it's just really difficult to break that bad experience or really get that movement going. So what can we be doing creatively with all of the resort associations in the region and the resorts themselves to really effectively communicate what we anticipate to be the storm and the traffic conditions to be. I think that's something that is probably underutilized at this point, and that collaborative message is something that we can continue to work on. We've already had extensive conversation with that. And I think that there's some refinements to what we can do in Truckee to try and stop some of the gridlock in certain areas. One example that always comes up with that is along Donner Pass Road at the lake. And I think everybody I've talked to in this room knows I live at the west end of Donner Lake. I don't live in Reno and just come to work here. I'm acutely aware of what gridlock along Donner Pass Road is, particularly when my wife sits in it and then gets home. Because apparently she also feels this is a responsibility of the police chief. So you have my full attention in this matter. We continue to be creative about it, and I think there's a lot of things that we can do preventatively to enhance it. I think the game, with the amount of information that's available to people at their fingertips sitting in cars, has changed the gridlock plan from what it used to be in 2005 and 2008. So it's not as simple as just revisiting that. I hear it, or I see it on social media as referred to as the locals lane. And I think that there's some merit to discussing that again, but I just caution people to manage their expectations because the amount of vehicles we have is more, and just the tremendous amount of information that people have is different, including the GPS is rerouting them. That wasn't a variable that we had back when that was a program that was instituted. So a lot of dynamics. I don't want to take a bunch of time, but we're actively listening, watching social media, and more to come on preventative communication.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chief. And the other thing that I hate to admit I recently subscribed to are the Nixle alerts. Text 888-7, is that the right number?
Yeah, 888-777. You enter your area code. Once you're signed up, you can do a variety of things to limit the amount of alerts you get so it's not constantly blowing you up. But the single best thing you can do for us to communicate with you in an effective way, either for situations like this and also moving into summer for wildfire preparedness and evacuations. Yeah, it's critical.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other comment? Any other public comment? All right. Seeing none, we'll close public comment and move on to our presentations this evening. Very exciting presentations tonight, the announcement of Planning Commissioner appointments. And I think first up, Jessica.
I'd love to introduce my appointed Planning Commissioner, Dave Gov. Give a wave to our Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Dave. So Dave is originally from the San Francisco Bay Area. He has over 25 years of experience in construction and real estate. He started his career with a custom home crew here in Lake Tahoe and systematically worked his way through the trades he acquired. Sorry, I'm reading because there was a lot of information, so I don't want to have any errors. He acquired hands-on experience in literally every aspect of the construction process. He started as a laborer, continuing on up to being a leader. He studied construction and business management at night while he was working his way through the trades. In '97, Dave was a founding member of California Craftsman, which is a San Francisco-based design, build, general contracting firm that served homeowners, business owners, and investors in the city. He moved to Las Vegas in 2002 and for the formation of the Gov Corporation, and in 2007, he founded the Asset Building Group. Dave's passion for the outdoors and small town life brought him back here to the Truckee, Tahoe area in 2012. So currently he sells and develops real estate while also managing various aspects of construction projects. Dave has experience managing commercial, multifamily, and residential projects. He's a graduate of the Truckee North Lake Tahoe Leadership Program, and Dave lives with his girlfriend, Callie, her 4-year-old daughter, Charlotte. And like any good Truckeeite, they have 2 dogs, and he loves to ski and mountain bike in his free time. So I believe he'll be a real asset to the Planning Commission.
Fantastic. Dave, do you care to say a few words or get used to the Planning Commission experience?
Good evening, everybody. I'm a little off right now because I've got some sort of head cold and I can only hear out of one ear and I'm dizzy, so this is a little not my, maybe not be my best public speaking presentation. But Jessica, thank you for the opportunity. Council members, town of Truckee, citizens, I look forward to being, another spoke on the wheel here, and happy to have this part of, the experience, and look forward to leaning in with my experience and hopefully, being a positive point of contact for the community, and just very grateful for this opportunity and hope to serve you all well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dave. And didn't you play Morgan Goodwin in The Follies? Okay, I thought you. Yeah.
Sorry.
So there's some acting in there in the resume as well. Okay. All right. Welcome to the Planning Commission and congratulations again, Council Member Pallavi.
I'd like to introduce Nikki Riley. Come on up. You can come up to the dais. Then everybody can see you better. Come on. Nikki moved to Truckee in 1988 after graduating from UC Berkeley with a degree in architecture. She's split her time working for nonprofits and the private sector, as well as running her own design and fabrication business. She most recently worked as the development director for Mountain Area Preservation and is now working for herself as a residential designer and land use planning consultant. Nikki has served on numerous boards and committees, including being a past member of the Truckee Planning Commission, the Truckee Public Art Commission, the Nevada County First Five Commission, the Statewide Watershed Commission, a lot of commissions, nice work, Nikki, Mountain Area Preservation Board, and the Martis Fund Board. She's currently representing MAP as the Martis Fund Board President. She lives in Glenshire with her husband Brendan, sons Dylan and Harlan, and dog Aja, and her family is here. So, and then, really just on a personal note, Nikki and I have been friends for 20 years or so. We used to work together back in Sierra Business Council days. In the early 2000s, and as a planning commissioner myself, I really learned to listen to what Nikki had to say and get a lot of her experiences as she was coming on board and really learning about what was going, or I was learning about what was going on in town, and she had a lot of that experience already. So I think coming back on the Planning Commission as I move into my role in Town Council, it's really exciting, and excuse me, I welcome her to the job. So welcome.
Thank you. This is an honor, and as Dave mentioned, I've been on the Planning Commission before, and so I have a sense of what I'm stepping into, and I feel it's a real privilege to serve the town and be a representative of the community, and bring with it my perspective. I did serve during the last general plan update, and so that's really what I'm most excited about right now, is moving into this position, is getting to play a role in this incredible opportunity where we start to revisit these guiding documents and look at the vision of the community. So thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to this, and I appreciate the appointment.
Thank you, Nikki. Welcome. And Councilmember Klovstadt.
So it is my pleasure to introduce Susie Tarnay as my Planning Commission appointment. I first met Susie on the campaign trail and in this room, as many of you guys know. Susie originally came from the East Coast and felt an immediate affinity for Truckee, as she's expressed so eloquently so many times. She has a master's degree in civil engineering and has done a lot of work in our community in a variety of ways, including construction, and currently as a substitute teacher at several of our community schools. She lives in Sierra Meadows with her husband and 2 kids. Oh, yay, Sarah, hi. And has a real passion and affinity for public service and our community. She is a diligent attendee at both Planning Commission and Town Council. Every time I spoke with her, I was very impressed with her depth and breadth of knowledge and her passion for understanding more. So it is with that I am very honored to appoint Susie to Planning Commission. You want to come up and say a few words?
Thank you so much, Anna. I'm deeply grateful and honored to be here. It's been so much fun to learn all of what's going on in the town, and I've really enjoyed all the input from the staff and the former council and the current council. I look forward so much to getting to dig into the details and to getting to know everybody better. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Susie. Yeah, clearly our community is going to be very well served. So welcome to all of you, and looking forward to your service on the Planning Commission in the years to come. Next up, Danielle. I think we're going to have an overview of the brand new General Plan 2040 website. Oh, I guess I can open public comment at the end of all the presentations, right? Okay, yeah.
Good evening, Council. So tonight we have something a little bit different than what we normally do for our presentations, in that I'm just going to walk you through our very exciting new general plan website. And part of the reason why we wanted to do this is that, first, we put a lot of effort into it, and two, it's an exciting opportunity for the community to understand how to get information and how to participate that might be different than what we've done in the past. So that's exciting. So what you see when you type in Truckee2040.com, which is the official website for all things related to the general plan update, the downtown specific plan update, and the climate action planning associated with that project, is this homepage here. So you have our very prominent logo with, although it sort of looks circus tent-like, that's on purpose. We really wanted to make a bold statement with this general plan update, and so that was very purposeful. I would also like to recognize Yumi Dawn for her work in doing this logo. It was slightly tweaked by our consultant, but at the core of it, Yumi did this work. So we want to recognize that. One of the first things that you're going to do when you log in is you're going to, and I'll actually pull up the other version of this so that we can have that available too. Oh, it still has me logged in. What you'll want to do is create your own login for this. So the homepage will have kind of an icon that shows you how to participate. I'm currently logged in as Truckee Planning, so that it's easy for us to walk through some of the aspects of this. But by logging in, it'll allow you to participate in the dialogues. It'll allow you to do some of the interactive mapping and share ideas, which you wouldn't be able to do unless you created a login for that. So be sure to do that when you go to this web page. Because I'm already logged in for that, what I can do is, if you want to learn about what the general plan is, we have a project overview page. So it gives you all of the background of what is a general plan update. It talks about the different elements that are involved. It talks about the work with the downtown specific plan. But more importantly, too, is constant tracking of where we are in the process. And I think that's an important thing for the community to be able to see, is that because this is a 2 to 3 year time frame that we're talking to do this general plan update, that sometimes it can get confusing about, well, where are we at in the process? And what this allows us to do is really keep that as a main point of focus, that right now we're moving forward into our existing conditions report. We have an administrative draft of that we're working on, and we'll have that available for our General Plan Advisory Committee to look at their next meeting in February. But this will help you orient yourself when you're going through the website. The other thing to keep in your mind when you're looking at this is this Share Ideas page, which is really interesting because you can go ahead and just directly type in here any topics that you think that we should be considering. You can go under sort of mapping and map your thoughts about different parts of the community. And you can also right now take the housing survey. So this is the survey that we did in our House Truckee First workshop. So we wanted to keep this consistent with that work and have it up here for people to be able to participate even if they're not able to make it to the workshop that we did or a future one that we're scheduling for the end of January or early February. So that's a good opportunity. All documents that we create and produce as part of the website will be posted here. So this is different, that you're not going to go to townoftruckee.com, you're going to go to Truckee2040.com, and this is where your resources will be. So anytime we do handouts, anytime we do information for a workshop, all of that's going to be on this website. It'll also go through all of the meetings, what we've done, what's coming up, our news and events. And if you're a GPAC member, this will be where you find all of your resources also. And it also allows the community to understand what the GPAC is doing, where they're at in their review process. And it'll have their meeting minutes, their agendas, and everything for you to be able to kind of go through and look at that. So I think that's an exciting part of this webpage. Going back to the homepage too, we will change these sort of tiles that are on here as the different topics change, but it's really just to create this really easy, accessible overview of what we have on this website. So again, you can click in here and do the housing survey. You can map your thoughts. So say you want to identify an opportunity site. What you want to do is, since you'll be logged in, is you can just drag and drop. Say I want to identify Donner Lake, and I drag and drop that marker and I add a comment that says more recreation, and then I submit it, and then it will keep that pin on there. And then as all of our community is starting to participate in this, it's tabulating and looking at all these different things, and then you can start seeing what other people are thinking. So that's kind of a fun interactive part of the website that you can do. There's might be a little hard to read on here, but there's a love it, there's a improvement needed, opportunity here, favorite park, adventure point, and totally Truckee. Which that took us a while to come up with. And then if you want to go to the discussion forum, I think that's, again, another area where if you're just not comfortable submitting comments in our more typical process where you have maybe a more formal letter or an email, you can kind of come on here, and we will add different topics as we kind of get further into the general plan update process. But that's really, in a nutshell, what we have built for this website. I think because it's one comprehensive page where you don't have to kind of click through a bunch of things to figure out, what's going on with the general plan update. It'll make it really accessible. We are working on producing some vinyl decals for car windows also to kind of advertise this. We just created an Instagram account today specific to Truckee 2040, and we'll be pushing some other information on Facebook so that this will be sort of that one-stop shop for people to go to for information. Briefly about sort of next steps, because I think that's important, is that the GPAC will be doing their next meeting coming towards the end of February. Jenna's finalizing the dates for that. But they will be doing some pretty heavy lifting at that next meeting, reviewing the existing conditions report that the consultant's been putting together. And then they'll also be talking about opportunities and constraints, which is a pretty robust kind of study session type of topic. And then we've tentatively looked at March as dates for expanding that to the community to have a workshop where we can talk about kind of the opportunities and constraints. So those are the immediate timelines. But again, if you ever get lost in the process, just be sure to go back to the homepage and you can walk yourself through the timeline. Jeff, did you want to add anything?
Just want to ask, we put those stickers on a bicycle?
You can, you can put them wherever you want. Yeah, you could.
Just checking.
We will be distributing. They'll be free. We'll distribute them to coffee shops and different businesses that want them so that they can put them out. I got some jokes about, well, people might just cut off the Truckee 2040, the 2040 part. And I said, yeah, but they would have had to read it to cut that off. So it's still effective. So that's okay. We're still advertising Truckee. That's a good thing.
Thank you, Danielle. What a terrific tool I think this is going to be and serve this process very, very well, and a great place to sort of gather everything in one spot. Open this to council comment before we...
Thank you. Cool website. Looks great to use a tool fit for 2019 for a project for 2019. There's been a lot of a question really about the How's Truckee First and where that fits in the timeline. It'd be cool. I was sort of hoping to see it in that top level timeline as to give people a sense of where and when we're doing that work.
Yeah, I mean, we can, now that we've done one of the first workshops, we can reorient this page too to better kind of shift that. It's a little bit of a management issue for us because the general plan consultant wasn't tasked to do the housing element, but I think because they've been very helpful for us and we're managing the content of the website, that we can easily create a section that has that. We have over here right now, if you wanted to find out about the presentation, the survey results, we've already got that up there. So we have the opportunity pretty clearly on here to add that additional information. And you're right, the timeline is a little bit different, that we're looking to have the housing element adopted by August, which is much faster than the 2 to 3 year time frame.
And we do intend to have a couple more smaller versions or focused versions of How's Truckee First. We just haven't been able to. There's a lot of public meetings right now kind of going on in a short span of time, so we're trying to find dates that work for people and work for staff. But that'll be part of it. And we anticipate that even though the housing element will be done earlier, or at least be turned into the state earlier, there will be housing conversation that will continue throughout the process, because it will, land use is housing, and when you do circulation, you'll come back to housing. So there'll be more to come after the housing element deadline comes and goes.
Great, thank you.
Anna.
Well, as websites go, what do you think? It's all right? It's good? I like it. I just really want to encourage everybody in this room to log on, check it out. email it to people, share it on your favorite social media platform, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. The more people we have eyes on this, the more comments and posts and totally Truckee dots that we create, the better the GPAC is going to be able to align the desires of the community with this general plan update. And it is so critical. So please, everybody in this room, do that and then ask their friends to do it too.
Absolutely. Thanks, Anna, for that. Any other comment?
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much for all the work that's gone into it. It's a beautiful website. It looks like it's easy enough to use that really everybody should be going on to share their input. I love how accessible it is for the entire community. Thank
So
you.
I just logged out too so that you can see how easy it is. Here's the button where you sign up. So it's right on the front, and that's where you want to put in your information so you can stay engaged.
Great. Thank you. All right. Well, unless there's any other council comment or questions, we'll open all the presentation items up for public comment. That's the Planning Commission appointments as well as the website. All right. Seeing none, we'll close public comment and move on to our consent calendar. So consent calendar this evening, we have item 6.1, which is the minutes of the December 11th, 2018 meeting. 6.2, acceptance of the rail yard area roadways and parking for maintenance. That includes Donner Pass Road, Truckee Way, Church Street, and Roundhouse Way. 6.3, a contract with Wood Rogers, a contract amendment for Interstate 80, Donner Pass Road, Coldstream Road roundabout design. 6.4 is the amended civil engineering contract with GHD for the Stockrest Springs Road roundabout project. 6.5 is consultant selection for Caltrans adaptation planning grant. And 6.6 is a notice of completion for the 2018 slurry seal project. Entertain motion.
I just had actually
any comment?
Yeah, just one quick comment on page 5. I was reading through the minutes and it identified me as vice mayor versus our actual Vice Mayor Goodwin over there, and wanted to know if we needed to correct that. But other than that, everything is good, and I will make a motion with that. Oh, are you ready?
Actually,
sorry.
I just realized.
Jumped the gun there.
Yeah, I jumped the gun. Yes.
First meeting being the mayor or something. I don't know.
So I first will ask if any member of the council would like to pull an item. Nope. How about member of staff? Any member of the public? All right. Now we'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve our consent calendar.
Thank you, Dave.
Second.
Thank you, Morgan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Are we all good? Yep. Okay. We're about to move into our discussion items. So item 7.1 is a staff report on the Transit Center Relocation Feasibility Study Project Advisory Committee. And Kelly Beatty, I believe you're going to lead us through this one.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and council members. So we are here to discuss the project advisory committee for the Transit Center Relocation Feasibility Study. Wanted to do a quick background. So so as you can see, we have a pretty robust transit hub in historic downtown Truckee at the train depot. This is well utilized by our Truckee TART services, Regional TART, Greyhound and Amtrak. We also have the North Lake Tahoe Express Airport shuttle that comes through there. We run a number of seasonal community shuttles that access this location, as well as tour buses and RVs. Our long-range transit plan that was adopted last year identified that the existing transit center is often beyond capacity, as you can see from these photos, and that the future services that are outlined in our long-range transit plan would result in the site being challenged to be able to accommodate those additional services and buses that would need to run through there. So the town submitted a grant application to review optional sites or expansion of the existing site. We were awarded a sustainable transportation planning grant of $88,530 to conduct this study. So just a quick overview of our transit operations. We currently run, within Truckee, we run Dial-A-Ride that goes to all of our neighborhoods here in the community. We also run a fixed route that in the non-winter months serves the primary corridor of Donner Pass Road, and then during the winter months we zip up to Donner Summit, and that's in partnership with our Summit Resorts as well as Placer County. Also, the North Shore is connected to Truckee through the Placer County TART service along Highway 89 and 267. So the long-range plan identified enhancements to our transit services, and you'll see on the map that it includes fixed route service in some capacity at some time when we receive funding to do that in our neighborhoods, as well as currently the Placer TART service runs night service on the North Shore, and our plan identifies an option to provide that service to Truckee as well as funding becomes available. Also looking at operating 30-minute headways at some point on the regional service to Truckee. Currently we operate on hourly headways. So what this means is that at some point as we expand our transit operations, we'll have many more buses coming into the area and needing a transit hub that can accommodate them. So we conducted an RFP process and we hired Green Dot Transportation Solutions. They have a sub-consultant team that includes Nelson Nygaard. Their primary role is to conduct the transit center needs analysis. A design workshop will be providing site design, and AIM Consulting has expertise to conduct public outreach and community engagement. So we held a kickoff meeting in December with our consultant team, and we visited 5 potential sites. So the train depot in historic downtown Truckee is our existing location, as mentioned earlier. So this site, in some fashion, potentially could be expanded, and that will all be reviewed through the feasibility study process. I just want to make a clarification that if the transit center were to be moved to a different location, the thought is to retain some kind of transit presence at that location. So in form of a bus stop for the TART services. Likely Greyhound and Amtrak would continue using the train depot in some fashion, but all of these details will be flushed out through this process. So we aren't completely pulling the transit center out of downtown. So I just wanted to make that clarification. The next location was, or option that we looked at, is the old CHP facility on Highway 89. And I don't know if I have, I guess I can't, oh, there we go. So that's this area right through here. The next location is on West River Street. So this is the bulk plant facility in this area. So along the railroad line, 200 feet on either side is under lease by, through the railroad. But that's another potential option that'll be looked at. And also the rail yard, obviously could be an option as well. And there was some transit component that was identified in the master plan. And then lastly, we made our way back to Town Hall, and another potential site is the vacant property across from Town Hall, which is owned by the airport, which is this large area. And it's pretty cool. You can see TRK for Truckee in there. So we will be seeking input from the general public and the project advisory committee on other location options, and would also like to know if the town council has any thoughts on other potential sites. As mentioned in prior staff reports, a robust public outreach process is a key element to the study process. In addition to community engagement, we plan to form a project advisory committee. The role of the PAC at a minimum will include identifying additional sites to be evaluated along with the evaluation criteria, identifying site amenities, advising on the public outreach process and strategy, participating at the public workshops, and ultimately making a recommendation on the preferred site. We've put together this list of potential participants to serve on the PAC, and again, would like the feedback from the town council if you think that others should be added. So the recommendation this evening is for the town council to appoint a town council member to serve on the Transit Center Relocation Feasibility Study Project Advisory Committee. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Any questions from council? Morgan, Anna? Nope. This way, Dave?
Just one quick one. How long is the contract with them, or what's the timeline on how long this is going to go?
So when we submit our application for a grant, at least in my world, there's a particular time period. So the grant itself was running from January of this year through 2020, June of 2020. So our timeline is for the project to be throughout that time period, because if we need all of that time, we don't want to have to go back. If it was for a shorter amount of time and we needed more time, then we have to jump through a bunch of hoops with Caltrans. So we can certainly complete the project sooner, which is our goal. The thought was that we would have potentially up to 6 PAC meetings. We're looking at having the first sometime in February. We're working with a consultant on that at this time.
So Kelly, I may have missed the end of the study again would be end of the year?
Well, we have until June of 2020 to complete the project.
Okay.
Our desire is until June of 2021. Our desire is to have the project completed much sooner than that, but we have that time if we need it.
Okay. Any other council questions?
I actually did have one.
Okay.
And I sent this ahead of time, but for public benefit, I think we were going to look at including some ski resorts in that in order to make sure that we were accommodating their needs and workflow.
Yes.
Both workers and visitors.
Yes, and we've added them to the list based on that comment, as well as we are also soliciting for members of the general public as well through our town website and social media solicitation process.
Because while it's great to have the North Star shuttle from the downtown area, when my daughter was actually working there, we still had to drive her there because there was no public transit in time to get her there to work. So just working out kinks like that would be really helpful.
Okay, I'm going to open this item up for public comment. Seeing none, we'll close public comment and then bring it back to council for direction, discussion, thoughts on anyone up here interested in participating on this committee. Now, this would be in addition to item 7.5, the committees, the other committees that we're talking about, correct?
Yes.
It's not one of the ones listed
I don't
there.
believe it's listed. Yeah, this is a new one.
Yeah, it's not, but if there's no one jumping up to accept the role, you could roll this conversation into the later one once you've divvied up other responsibilities at your discretion.
So that would give everyone more time to think about this and then make their call. Okay.
And see what else we've committed to.
Yeah. So why don't perhaps we do that. We defer until we have the larger discussion about the committees, and Kelly, you don't have to hang around for that, but we can send you a message.
Sounds good.
Where we end up. Any other thoughts? Do we need that? That was basic. And then the composition of the advisory committee itself. It looks like a pretty robust committee. But any other council thoughts on the composition of this committee? That was good input about the ski areas, and I think the general public as well. So. I think
if someone from the public did have an alternative site in mind, what would be the best way for them to raise that? I mean, I can obviously email any of us or send a comment through the town website, but.
They can send an email or contact me directly.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. So there's no resolution here. This was just primarily input, correct? Okay. All right. So do you have what you need for now? And hopefully we'll have a town council member identified at the end of the evening.
Yep.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Next up, item 7.2, which is a traffic and facility impact fee public hearing and fee adjustment for fiscal year 2000. Is that right? 2017-18, or is it? It is correct. Okay. Mike Vaughn. So we're looking in arrears here, in a way. Okay. All right.
It's for the previous fiscal year.
Right. Okay.
Stuff down here. That's why. Thank you. There we go. Yes, thank you. So I'm just going to give you a warning at the beginning that there might be a few numbers in this presentation. So.
Well, we have a numbers person up here, so.
So yeah, for the purpose for tonight's meeting is to conduct a public hearing that's required as part of the AB 6800 program, and it is for the previous fiscal year, 17-18. And it will be jumping back and forth between the facilities impact fee program and the traffic impact fee program, where we discuss fees collected and where we made expenditures. And then the second part is a resolution that I'll get into a little later about Resolution 2019-01, in which we want to hold on to some funds that we've collected longer than 5 years ago, and also make minor adjustments each year to the fees so that we stay current with construction costs. And so without further ado, I'll start out with the traffic impact fee program. And this previous year, we collected just over $1.2 million, and with interest, just under $50,000. And we expended fees from the traffic impact fee program, just over $2 million, and that can be in either design or construction of projects that are in the program. So some of the items, wrong button. Some of the items we spent last year were finishing up the closeout of the Mouse Hole project, so spent some traffic impact fees. The project that was in design and into construction last year, the Donner Pass Road Corridor project on Envision DPR from Coldstream Road towards 89 South. Brockway Road Corridor project, a portion of that was funded by traffic impact fees, specifically the left turn pocket at Brockway Road and Reynolds Way. And then some money was spent on closing out the Glenshire Dorchester paving and widening project. A new one that's in design stage that's just starting up, was mentioned earlier in the consent calendar, was the I-80 Donner Pass Road, Coldstream Road roundabout, which is going to be a project that's coming into design as part of the PC1 project, Plan Community 1. And Church Street Extension is in the design phase, as well as another topic on the consent calendar was the Bridge Street West River Street intersection and the Bridge Street Donner Pass Road intersection. We're starting to do studies on those intersections. For the facilities impact fee program, we collected $337,000, interest just under $20,000, and we spent money $200,000 on public service center buildings and the Trout Creek restoration design and Church Street extension design. So now I'm starting to get into the funds that we've held for more than 5 years, and what we want to do in a resolution is to hold on to those funds. Some of the projects that are bigger, that are further out in the program, we start collecting now because we wouldn't have time to collect money in a 5-year period. So we have our fees set to so we can fund the whole program. And over time, as we develop projects, we have the money available. So even though we've collected some money that we haven't spent 5 years ago, we still want to keep it so that we can have the money when the projects come in. So over the last 5 years, we've collected $4,388,000. And as of June 30th, 2018, we had a balance of over $6 million, minus that amount that we collected over these 5-year periods shows that we had $1.67 million that was collected previous to June 30th, or previous to 5 years ago. So Resolution 2019-01 is going to make findings so that we can hold on to that money so that it's available when we need it. I think that's covers that. And then as we spend money, we obviously take the money out of the program that's used for the projects that are programmed now in the 5-year capital project. So facilities, we collected $1.6 million over the last 5 years. We actually have a balance of $1.5 million. So subtracting those 5 years, we don't have any money that's been more than in the program more than 5 years. So we do not make any findings in the resolution to hold on to those monies. We automatically can keep those in there because everything's been collected within the last 5 years. And then the other part of the resolution is to do the fee adjustments, and this is going to be a bit confusing. I don't want to get into the whole traffic impact fee program, but a brief overview is that our traffic impact fee program, the way we calculate the fees is based on a dwelling unit equivalent for a single family residence. And then other land use, we plug in this number for a dwelling unit equivalent, which then other factors help us to determine fees for a restaurant or office or industrial space or other things. So a little later, there's a table in the resolution that shows the proposed fees for all the different categories. But right here, it just simply shows the current dwelling unit equivalent and then the proposed one from the staff report, and how we got the proposed fee is we basically look at construction cost index for all the projects that are in the program, and we use Engineering News Record construction cost index for the previous fiscal year to see what the increase is, and it was 3.03% over this last year. So then what we do is we apply those inflationary adjustments to all the projects that are in the program for the cost estimates. And exceptions of that is when we've already done a project and we've completed a project, we'll put the actual numbers in there. And so if we see savings, we'll adjust that, or if the costs are higher, then we'll adjust it. Or if a project's in design and we have a better cost estimate, we'll adjust the numbers. And then we divide that remaining amount of improvements by the remaining development in town to determine the fee for that year. And these are minor adjustments each year so that we stay on track. And then approximately 5 years, we do a more robust update, which takes out projects that have already been completed and then looks at what future development is going to happen, and we readjust the numbers and then make minor adjustments each year. In the staff report, we recommended the fees become effective March 1st, 2019, but thank you, Pat from CAT. I don't think she's here tonight, but she pointed out that any fee adjustments, is she here? Oh, thank you. Thank you, Pat. So she pointed out that any fee adjustments, we have to have at least 60 days. So we had adjusted, I'm recommending in my final recommendation that we make these fees effective March 15th, 2019. The traffic impact fee program, I'll show you a little later in a table how that affects the fees. The facilities is pretty straightforward. We only have 4 land use categories in the facilities impact fee program. And what we did for these increases was just to directly apply the cost of construction index to these current fees for the proposed ones. So I'm not expecting you to read these. And again, that will change the effective date to March 15th. I'm not expecting you to read this whole table. I just to show you that this is the Exhibit B of Resolution 2019-01, which shows, if you can look at the top of the traffic impact fee program. Right here is where we plug in the new dwelling unit equivalent fee, and then it's distributed. You can see the fees on this right-hand side for all the different categories, such as restaurant or supermarket or office. And then at the bottom is the facilities impact fee program changes I just discussed. So without further ado, the recommendation and the staff report is that we just conducted the public hearing and that we adopt Resolution 2019-01 to retain the funds held in excess of 5 years and approve the annual program fee adjustments with the change of the proposed effective date to March 15th, 2019.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate the overview. Any questions from council, starting on this side this time? No? Okay. Morgan.
So 2 questions. It looks like the projects where we had real numbers and estimates came in lower than we projected.
So far, that's been the case on this year's ones for the Brockway Road left turn lane at Reynolds and also South Shore Drive.
And that's why we're the 3% cost of construction increase is a little bit more than we're actually increasing the fees by.
Correct. I think we're going up 2.59%, I think. The fee went up, but the construction cost index was 3.03, correct.
Well, great job on keeping those down. And then for the dwelling unit equivalent, or I think actually just dwelling units. So one of the questions we've been grappling with a lot is for residential projects, are smaller units paying the same? Is it a square footage based thing? How do we calculate that?
Yes, correct. Last year we did a change from just from dwelling unit to based on square footage. So those are factored in there now. So the size of the unit does determine the fee. I should have said the dwelling unit equivalent is based on a single family residence in the whole program. But then what we did last year was converted so that we were paying by a square foot. So again, in that update that happens approximately every 5 years, we'll probably relook at the average size of the home and to determine that representative single family unit. But yes, the fees were converted last year to go to incentivize smaller homes.
And this will come back to you in the next item when we, in a kind of a more broad sort of policy forum where we use the term scalable fees, or Mountain Housing Council does, and that when we talk scalable fees, that's exactly the change that was made.
So that's actually what we did last year. Yeah, we were actually made ours scalable last year. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Ours too.
Any other question?
Yeah, so as I'm educating myself on trip generation and transportation engineering, these are all based on kind of a general standards. I understand the transportation engineer's trip generation manual, and that's going to determine the trips of a supermarket versus a single family home versus industrial. That's what all of this is based on. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, there's 2 parts to that question. So I think to answer your direct question, you're maybe looking at the dwelling unit equivalent table and the factors and the fee calculations, and that's how we kind of compare an office use to a single family residence use. So our fees are based on the single family residence, but then the trip generation for office is obviously different than for single family residence. So the factors over on these right side of the table are the peak hour trip rates and percentage of trips, new trips. They determine your dwelling unit per unit. So for every 1,000 square feet of office, for example, you have 1.49 dwelling unit equivalents per 1,000 square feet. So,
and then that's multiplied by the PM peak hour trip rates per unit in order to create that fee. Is that correct?
Then the dwelling unit equivalent per unit is then multiplied by the 6185 to determine the fee, but we've also made a column over here just to figure it out per square foot instead of per 1,000 square foot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're getting, I mean, you got to exactly what I was getting at. All of these are based on a residential and then applied to these different uses.
Correct.
Based on the transportation engineer's trip generation standards.
And we actually do a traffic model to get it to work for Truckee.
Okay.
So some of these have been
unique.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, great. And then the engineering news record that you used for the construction cost index increase, did you look at any others?
Well, our traffic impact fee program ordinance actually refers to the engineering news record construction cost index to use for that. But I was talking to Dan about this earlier. We had a lot of discussion about what to use when we set that program up. But I will say that it's been pretty accurate because the construction cost index, takes nationwide, but it definitely is influenced by California and places like California and New York and stuff. And the increases have been pretty consistent with what we see for cost of living adjustments that are actually based out of San Francisco. So.
Okay, so it is kind of equalizing that way.
And it's keeping us, obviously we don't want to overcharge and have an excess at the end, but we don't want to undercharge and then the people at the end are paying a lot of extra. So it seems to be the engineering news record construction cost index seems to be keeping us in line when we do the more robust updates. So
because again, this is just the construction cost increase that we're talking about, the factor, not necessarily the actual value of the bids that are coming in, because that's going to vary dependent upon a lot of different other factors.
Right, and in the table, we're adjusting our estimated costs for each project.
Right.
And as we get better information, like an actual cost estimate when we're going out to bid, we'll adjust it. Or when we actually go to construction, like you pointed out, we've saved some money on some of these projects. So if we spent more on a certain project, it's going to adjust it up a little bit. If we spend less, it's going to.
For the next series
Yeah.
of fees.
Correct.
Presented. Okay, thank you very much, Mike.
All right.
Thank you. So I think at this time, unless there are any other council questions, Jesse, any questions? We're good? Okay. We're going to, we're technically in a public hearing. We're going to ask if anyone has any comments, either in support of or against the action that is sought here by the staff recommendation.
Good evening, Mayor Tierman, members of the council. My name is Pat Davison with the Contractors Association of Truckee Tahoe. First off, I want to start off, Happy New Year to everybody. Want to thank Mike for the advance notice, and I did have a question about the effective date, so he was pretty quick in the turnaround response on that. And the other minor piece of information, because we did go to that scalable fee set up last year, my notes showed that last year the residential price per square foot or fee per square foot was $2.62, and it's a 7-cent increase as a result of the 2.59%, so we're looking at $2.69 per square foot, if I understand correctly how our fee program worked. So there was a 7-cent increase from last year's fee to this year. So with that, we have no issues or concerns. Happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Any other comment, public comment? Okay, seeing none, I think we'll close the public hearing and then move on to council direction. And we have a recommendation here on the screen. Do I have any motion from the dais?
Or a robust philosophical discussion, maybe?
Oh. I am sorry, yes.
No, I'm joking. I just want to commend staff on a really smooth process for the update for this. It's always nice to be able to move this quickly through the process so we can focus on things that do warrant larger philosophical discussions.
Thank you. Anna, anything to add?
No, I just really appreciate everybody answering all my questions today.
All right. Thank you.
Like a motion?
All right. Yep. Please.
Make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2019-01 to retain the funds held in excess of 5 years and approve the annual program fee adjustments with the change of the proposed effective date to March 15th, 2019.
Thank you, Dave. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jessica. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Absolutely. At this point, we'll take a 7-minute break, recess. we look out after each other up here. Are you guys ready? All right, we're going to close the recess and reconvene with item number 7.3, staff report. This pertains to the Mountain Housing Council fee study policy brief and recommendation, and I believe Yumi Don, you're queued up, right?
Yeah,
all
I'm
right.
ready.
Great.
Mine'll actually be a one-slide presentation, and then I'll turn it over to Shauna Doherty of Mountain Housing Council to give a more robust presentation. As you know, the town of Truckee has partnered with Placer County, Nevada County, and other nonprofit agencies, business stakeholders in the community to be part of the Mountain Housing Council, which is a stakeholders group that is looking at housing solutions for our community for the Truckee, North Tahoe area. So in April 2018, Mountain Housing Council provided a first policy recommendation to the town council on the definition for achievable locals housing as a definition, a more regional definition that we can all discuss as a community. Today we're talking about a second policy recommendation that was adopted by Mountain Housing Council in September, which is about fee policies. It's specifically directed towards development impact fees in our community, and the town specifically collects facilities fees and traffic impact fees. Other agencies collect their own impact fees, but those are the ones that the town has control over. So today, staff's recommendation is to review and accept the fee study policy brief and recommendation by the Mountain Housing Council. So.
Thank you, Yumi.
Okay, so Happy New Year. My name is Shauna Doherty, and I am the project director for Mountain Housing Council, and I'm going to take the liberty to welcome the new council members and do a little bit of a background on Mountain Housing Council for some of our new council, though I'm sure you're well aware of it. So Mountain Housing Council, we are about halfway through a 3-year project of the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation. This Friday is our 7th quarterly meeting out of 12. We are comprised of 29 partners. Thank you very much to Town of Truckee, especially I'd like to thank Yumi and Jeff and David Tierman and Morgan for service on all sorts of not only our Mountain Housing Council quarterly meetings, but also lots of our work teams. So thank you very much. So a little bit of the framing on this. Like Yumi said, this was adopted by the 29 partners in September. And the reason that we took this issue on is because we heard over and over again, hold on one second. I'm going to go back to that. The reason we took this on, we heard over and over again from the developer community and from our partners, was the question, are our fees higher in this region than in other areas? We heard the perception that was out there. Again, I say the word perception, that the reason that we weren't getting local housing built was because our fees were so high. And so we hired Hansford Economic Consulting, Catherine Hansford, to take a look at that, look at our fees in the region, take a look at our fees as compared to other regions, and answer that question. A, are our fees higher? And B, is there anything we can do to create incentives to lower that perceived barrier? Knowing that at the end of the day, we're trying to create a culture in this region that says that we would like your private investment dollars to come and help us move the needle forward on housing. So here's where we're at. Again, we got endorsement from the 29 partners, and we're in the process now of rolling it out there's 18 fee chargers in our region. And tonight I'm here, tomorrow night I'm at the school district, I'm going to the airport district, the fire district's looking at this. So it's exciting that this is really starting to marinate with the different jurisdictions who, again, look at fees very differently. And all of our white papers and recommendations are really meant to create a framework for discussion. And we really hope that our partners take them and really look at their own fees or their own policies and figure out how to move forward. So again, these were the questions we asked. We were able to get 10 of the 18 fee chargers in the room for 6 months to look at the findings that Hansford brought to us and really use that data to drive our conversation. So again, as Yumi said, didn't look at all the fees. We really focus on the development impact fees. Hold on one second. So what do we find again, for all of those who, I have to say I reread this. Excellent report. Really, I reread it. You know when you reread things that you worked on and you go, wow. It really is. It's very short for a very complex issue. Yeah, I have to say, as compared to the so just get ready because the short-term rental white paper's coming out and it's 46 pages and it doesn't have quite as nice of a read. So this one delighted me. Once again, it's simple and it's on our website for everyone to take a look at. So again, what do we find out? Fees, why is the perception out there that fees are complex and challenging in our region? We have 18 different fee chargers and everybody uses a different structure for how they charge fees. So an example, here's a map, and I can't actually even read that, but we took the base fees for a 1,400 square foot house. And again, we did this report in 2017, so I'm sure the numbers are slightly different, but the point is that the same house fees over in Kings Beach are going to be very different than Donner Summit for a variety of reasons. Every time you build in a certain region, there's a package of fees you have to pay depending on the region, whether it's park and rec fees or the utilities. So they get packaged up, and then that becomes the developers or the homeowner's job to pay those. So again, first time that we've ever had our regional fee landscape in one location. Just to answer the question, yes, in fact, it is confusing and complex in our region. What we also found from the study, and again, I'm going to go through these really quickly, is that answering the question, are fees a barrier to building achievable local housing? That's the question we were asked. We asked as part of the study. And what we found is, yes, building any type of housing for locals is challenging, but primarily because of the cost of construction. And that continues to go up. It's a problem throughout the country. And really, in fact, development impact fees for multifamily are about 6%, and for single family, they're about 4%. Again, every dollar matters when you're really close to the margin of making a project pencil or not. However, just to put it in perspective, that on the scale of total project costs, fees, in fact, are not. They really shouldn't be the barrier. This is just an example that one of the findings in the study is that for multifamily or apartment type projects, we did a pro forma using a lot of the numbers from the Rail Yard project, and our project costs, obviously for multifamily in our construction costs are higher, but the ratio of our fees is about the same as in Reno. So this is another thing we looked at, fees by unit size throughout the region. The thing to point out here is this is when the town of Truckee did move to scalability. And again, I'm not going to go through all this, but you'll see over for the town of Truckee, each of the regions has a 3,000 square foot house, a 1,400 square foot, and a 900 square foot house. And you can really see the benefit of that scalability fee starting to work. So the 900 square foot house is paying, I think it says 22,000. I have it right here. And then the larger house is obviously paying a higher fee. 49. So Placer County does not do fees at a scalable level. So you can see that for the smaller units, they're not showing that sort of incentive for less fees for smaller. So good job, Truckee. It's helpful. Single family, same thing again. Hold on one second. So this is answering the question that was part of the report, which is how do our fees compare to other areas? And as you can see, so we looked at Sunnyvale, Palo Alto, and Folsom, and Reno, and we picked those because that's quite honestly, when you get into some of the other areas like San Francisco, the fees are incredibly complex. So we were just trying to get the Bay Area, the peninsula, and then the Sacramento area. And as you can see, in fact, our fees are not higher than other areas. Yes, Reno, but that has a lot to do with state laws. So hopefully when you get that question at the front desk, when people ask you about your fees, that you can point them to this report. And yes, fees are high because costs of building are high, right? And it's a percentage, but our fees are not, in fact, higher than the Bay Area, which we heard a lot in the beginning when we started this report. And again, this is just looking at the same type of information, but how do our fees compare when you do single family, which I just showed you, and this is for multifamily. And in Palo Alto, and in actually in the South Bay and in the Sacramento area, it's actually higher. So this is my last slide. First of all, thank you very much to the town for jumping even before we got this the Mountain Housing Council fee recommendation out the door last January. You had already approved doing the scalable fees. So that really set the tone for this whole effort. And we really applaud you for doing that. So the three recommendations that are in our study are to do the charge impact fees based on a scalable methodology. For you, this is based on square footage rather than a flat fee. For other entities, it could be per bedroom, per fixture, rather than a flat fee. And again, the purpose being to provide incentives for that affordability by design. So you already did that. The second recommendation is to offer impact fees and capacity fee deferrals until certificate of occupancy. And the reason behind this is that we heard from developers who are taking out loans and are assuming the risk of borrowing costs that by delaying the fees until the certificate of occupancy, it just reduces the finance and the borrowing costs. And we talked to several communities to see if this was something that was appealing and appreciated by developers, and it was. And so we moved that forward. So today the town does, you do have fee deferrals in place specifically for three particular types of situations. Affordable projects get at least a fee deferral. Inclusionary housing projects can request a fee deferral, and then any projects where the fees are over $25,000 on a case-by-case basis. In those three cases, you qualify for a fee deferral. What we're asking for additional consideration from the council tonight is that the addition of deferrals are extended to projects that deed restrict for a certain amount of years to be determined by staff that are affordable either for a local deed restriction or some kind of income ceiling. So that's the addition that we would ask for consideration. The second is for projects where fees are over $25,000, where it's a case by case, to have staff potentially look at that number and relook at it. What is the point of that? Is there a lower number, a different number that maybe incentivizes smaller projects? So number 3 is the last one, is just make sure that you're updating your policies, your ADU policies, accessory dwelling units to comply with state laws, to encourage ways to encourage more ADU permits. Obviously, the reason for that is to diversify our housing stock. Again, you've done this. We know there's no fees for accessory dwelling units under 500. Again, same thing as number 2 is consider also offering a deferral or for deed restricted ADUs for a particular amount of time to be determined. So those are just sort of additional considerations that have come forward since we published this in September. And we met with staff on this. It's not a surprise to them, and they helped to guide us on sort of some of those incentives. So in close, I'd like to just remind us all that fees are obviously not a silver bullet. But to get us to move the needle on our housing crisis, it's really going to take numerous dozens, hundreds of these tiny, small steps, and like we have before us tonight. Thank you for your time. And again, all this information, all the background information, including the Hansford study, is on our website. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shauna. Very interesting report. I'm going to open this up for any council questions or comments, starting with Morgan.
Mayor, could I just add a couple of comments to the kind of finish off the presentation? Thank you, Shauna. Many of us have worked on this over the many months, and it's, like all studies, it's a kind of a consensus of the 29. So there's things in there that we might not 100% agree with, but in general, this is a terrific study. I think it showed a lot. It kind of broke down some myths, I think, that people had about Truckee, that the fees were astronomically higher than the region and some of the Bay Area, and it turns out that's not actually the case. This scalable fee thing, I think, is pretty dramatic. We haven't seen the results of it yet. It's too early, but the dramatic difference between a large house and a small house, large unit, small unit, I think is pretty interesting. And finally, this last, these suggestions for Shauna, it's important tonight to recognize we can't actually take action on those suggestions because they're not before you, and we have to do some research. There's resolutions to be changed. There's actually some ordinances that would need to go into that. So if you were interested in these additional considerations, you'd send that back to staff to come back to you with actual language. And then the second thing is we're not obligated, and I don't mean this any disrespect to all of us on Mountain Housing Council, but it is a group of 29, not all of whom represent the interests of Truckee. And I think it's important because many of these are going to come forward over the next year. There's going to be a number of them. We're not obligated to do these things. These are things that the town has full control on. We can decide if it's the thing we want to do or not do and how far we want to go. So I just think it's important to pay attention to that because there are going to be other, I think this one's one of the easier ones because we were out front of it. I think things like short-term rentals and others, we might find a different path or part of it we might like, part of it we might not. And I think it's just important to bear that in mind.
Thank you, Jeff. Good points.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you, Shauna. My first question is kind of taking just a larger scope here, which is are any of these fees things that are basically state level? Like, are there any kind of state policy implications or ways that we can be helpful in trying to change that at the higher level? Or is this pretty much, this is all focused on local and regional?
Yeah, so for this particular study, we chose development impact fees because we were told by Hansford that those were the ones where you had some ability to create incentives. I know, for example, tomorrow night we're going to the school district, and they have certain fees that the state mandates they can't touch. And some they can. So this particular one is really focused, this particular study is on regional fees. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but we do, next coming to you is the state and federal policy platform that outlines our agenda for the Mountain Housing Council that we want to advocate at the state level. I don't think there's anything to do with fees there. It's mostly about funding.
And we do have to adhere to a number of state requirements and state laws when we set our fees, particularly the nexus requirement that anything we build for infrastructure has to be directly related to the impact of the construction. But beyond that, these are our fees. The town only charges 2. I think there are, I don't know, 11 or 12 totally that we end up getting involved in, and all we can do is recommend to the others.
Great. Well, I definitely look forward to that next topic as well. And then the other one is kind of at the other end of this, at the very beginning. We talked about the previous item, which was the achievable housing definition. And my understanding is that's a Mountain Housing Council recommendation that we come up with that definition, but that there's still room. We could go further in terms of having a town definition. That right now it's sort of a wide net of things that fall into that category.
Right. We currently don't really have any actual ordinance or requirement tied to that definition. We don't even actually have the definition in our code at this point. So it's a recommendation that's kind of out there, certainly going to be talked about extensively in the housing element conversation. But it could have major implications. For example, if we decided we would start to move into that achievable housing, which goes up to 195% of average income, it'd be very unlikely we would ever see anything down in the affordable range again if we said, gee, developers, you could do that. So we want to be very careful how we treat that. Having said that, we all know that there's a variety of housing types we need, and that's why that achievable housing definition we think is important, but we have not yet integrated into our fee structure or our inclusionary program. We think the housing element's the right place to have those, which we think of as fairly big conversations.
Great. I'm glad to hear that that's a housing element active conversation. I see Danielle nodding, which reassures me that we're going that way. Thank you.
Anna.
Well, Shauna, thank you. I too found that to be an interesting read, and no real questions, just the commentary that I think these accessory dwelling units are really worth investigating because there's a huge potential there to open up affordable and achievable housing to our community in a very quick time frame. So I definitely am interested in investigating that further.
Thank you. Dave?
I just have a couple quick, sort of more specific questions, and then maybe we figure out just how to couch all that going forward. But what percentage do you think of the applications that come in have fees that are above $25,000? Is that?
It tends to be commercial projects or multifamily projects. Coburn Crossing would be an example.
Stuff, though. I mean, we're talking about, right? Like as Shauna was providing examples of like those 77 unit type of projects in some of those slides. I mean, it's the bigger stuff. This isn't single family or individual projects, right? Just trying to wrap my head around some of that. And then I also just, maybe this is a wrong assumption, but just so that we're all on the same page and we're talking about ADUs, I assume we're talking there specifically about rental, and not purchase. People, when you have an ADU, we're not selling those off, as investments or anything like that. It's part of the parcel, it's part of the property, and it's primarily, in order to even qualify as an ADU, has to be a rental of some sort.
That's correct.
Yeah, just to clarify that. Great. Yeah, I mean, I think we should, as a council, we have to consider as much as we can on this topic as we move forward. We keep hearing it loud and clear, and it really is top of the issue. So thanks to Shauna and the work of the Mountain Housing Council and everybody on staff and on council who's been a part of it. It's really exciting to see all of these sort of white papers coming about, and I too look very much forward to the next one that you are proposing. Sure, Shauna, thank you.
So on page 9 in this report, we actually did sort of just a snapshot of a comparison it was 15 units. 2 bedrooms for each, number of one bathroom, total square footage of each unit is 1,000, so it's a 15,000 square foot project. And if it was a per unit methodology, your fees would be 375,000, and square footage methodology, your fees would go down to 270,000. So I guess I just wanted to frame that it actually, you get to 25,000 pretty quickly. So they're not always, it's not necessarily all the big projects. 25,000, right?
With how many go back to that, and how many units were you just speaking of? 17, is that what you said?
This was 15 units. 15
right.
units, but 15,000 square feet
15,000.
of living space. Yeah.
John, let me get that correct. Is that 25,000 in that case per unit, or 35 total fees?
25,000 per unit.
But is that total fees, not just town of Truckee traffic or facility fee?
Right.
Because our exemption is for either a traffic or facility fee of 25.
Development fees, town of Truckee. We had to include sewer, traffic, facilities,
Right.
park and rec, all of
So
of
that
them.
one wouldn't qualify.
Right.
I think that 25,000.
Part. I mean, that's where
Well, it was done years ago, and it has a different objective. The objective there is to acknowledge a very large project with very heavy fee burden that you might want, and you'd have total discretion, but the council might want to give a break to. That really isn't speaking to affordability or locals or any of the issues we currently have on the table. It's a very, as I look at it from the outside, it had a very different objective when they installed it years ago.
And I think
is that correct, Dan?
Yes, and a secondary objective is there's a fair amount of administration that goes into a fee deferral. Because fees are typically collected when a building permit's issued, when you delay it till the end, there's a need to record information against the property that there's these outstanding fees that need to be paid. So if the property sells mid-construction, that new owner has disclosure and they're not surprised by a $24,999 or whatever the number is fee at the end of the project. So that was another consideration that came into play. And there's actually a fee to enter into a fee deferral agreement that recognizes that. And that $25,000 number seemed to be the number at the time that would make sense for someone to even want to go through the administrative effort of requesting the fee deferral. So that's where that came from.
Well, and what makes me nervous too there, and as we dig deeper into the budget stuff, I mean, you see a lot of that now. I mean, you see a lot of these spec projects who don't necessarily go and get their certificate of occupancy until they do record a sale. And I mean, this stuff can go on forever, and especially in an economic downturn or what have you, there's a lot of risk there, I think, just at a very high level from at least that particular bullet point. The other ones I can get behind pretty well, but yeah, just really great stuff. Thank you, and we look forward to learning more.
Jessica.
I agree. Thank you, Shauna. It was the numbers are really enlightening, helpful. I obviously think that I know we haven't done our team building for 2019 yet, but it's been time and time again as council priorities. Really, housing has come first. So I would like to have the opportunity to revisit what we can do to really help with the fees and see what impact we can have.
Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, I agree with all the comment. Shauna, terrific report. It was great to also have the opportunity to participate in some of the more focused discussions on all of this. And, I think terrific that a spotlight has been really, focused on this issue. And so I'll look forward to our discussions as part of the general plan update with the housing element. And I do think that is the appropriate place to begin to delve into a lot of these recommendations. So I agree with that. I also think back to the earlier discussion about achievable housing and the so-called missing middle. And I wonder a little bit about the fee deferral and and this is something we can talk about as well during our larger housing discussion, whether there's any logic to considering that for market rate housing that really begins to tap into the missing middle segment in our town. I know there are mechanisms that we'll need to look at in order to do that, but that's just a question that I would put forth as well when we get to that point with the housing element discussion. So anyway, great job, and so glad we have a Mountain Housing Council really making a difference. So thank you. At this point, I think, did we do public comment? No, we haven't. Okay. All right. So why don't we open this up for public comment? It's been a long day. Started very early this morning with Good Morning Truckee. So.
Good evening again, Mayor Tierman, members of the council. Pat Davison for the record. I was part of the Tiger team that helped put this fee report together, and I am proud of the work that we did, Shauna. It was many hours, but I think very worthwhile, and it definitely gave us a platform to have the discussion with you tonight. I come to you tonight, though, with a specific request. And looking at the timing for the housing element update, 7 months from now, we've got to have something to turn over to the state of California. We have an opportunity to move this issue forward, to take on the council priority, and to show the community that we're serious about solving the housing problem. And I would strongly encourage you to at least take the local achievable housing definition and put that on the top of the list for that housing element update. Again, 7 months is going to go by like that. So I'm really worried about the clock ticking and being able to make use of that time. The fee deferral policy, I think, does have a little bit more legs to it. I would point out that the TRPA has done some work already, and there may be some other jurisdictions that we can look at for the guarantees, the promises, as we talked about, so that the town's risk is minimized. So happy to help in that discussion, and hoping that we can use the housing element update, the short-term process that we're in now, to get something forward. Otherwise, if we're waiting for the general plan, that could be another 2 years. So with that, happy to answer any questions, but that was really the gist of my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat. Any other public comment on this item? All right. Seeing none, we'll bring this back to council for discussion, deliberation, or a motion, I think, or do we need a motion? This is an acceptance of a report, correct?
It is. The only thing that if council has a strong desire to have us look at these very specific additions to the fee deferral options available, you might give us that direction, because that's really probably more detailed than a housing element we get into. That's really an ordinance thing, and if you want us to take a look at that and bring it back to you, this would be a time perhaps to do that. I think the ADU conversation is, well, I'll just leave it at that. So if either of those or any of those three additional things you think we should take a run at and bring back to you in actual form, this might be the time to give us some direction on that.
Okay. Start on this side. Anna?
I already iterated my interest in the accessory dwelling units investigation, so I'm definitely in favor of moving that one forward. I did pose some questions about the deferral of the fees to COO to staff, and they had very solid responses about assuring me that we would actually be able to collect those fees. I just know once you get beneficial occupancy, sometimes it's hard to extract those things, but sounds like they have a very solid plan, and I would definitely support both of those.
Okay, thank you. Morgan?
I guess my instinct here is to take a slightly different approach, which is that the recommendations listed on this seem to be pretty specific and pretty kind of targeted. And I'm still fascinated by what we heard about the Vail Housing Commission's kind of overall budget to purchase deed restrictions, which, you know, if we had a budget to go out and negotiate what a deed restriction looks like on an ADU or a multifamily housing unit or even a single family home, whether it's a new construction or old, it gives us a lot more leeway and a lot more flexibility to then, you know, if it's roughly the cost of what the fees would be, then we've effectively achieved the fee deferral or fee waiver without adding the whole paperwork of going through that process. I'm not saying that's not worth doing. I'm just, in terms of where we get the biggest bang for our buck, and what the amounts are, I don't know. That would be something to figure out.
One thing I would point out that I think on this recommendation, for example, in the ADUs, it talks about a waiver of fees, and we've been fairly consistent from the beginning that waiving fees is not a great idea. There's a certain one the state has sort of required, these small ADUs, but we're a little bit hesitant to want to, well, we're quite a bit hesitant to want to suggest waiving them entirely, because when you waive a fee, what you do is one of two things. If that happens a lot, either you're shorting your community the needed infrastructure, which we don't want to do, or you're placing that burden on other development, which you can't do.
Well, or more specifically, you have to backfill it with general fund money, because you can't have any cross subsidization. You can't charge the full freight to some people and have that be enough to make up for the fee waivers you've granted. It's a Prop 218 problem. So a fee waiver essentially means transferring money from the general fund to pay the fee.
Right. Yes. To be clear, I was suggesting coming up with a budget from the general fund and maybe later housing fund to purchase deed restrictions as a better alternative than pursuing these deferrals or waivers, which to me don't make as much sense and don't really get us further down the road and just would create a lot more paperwork.
We can certainly look at that as part of the budget process. I think it's worth noting that in any affordable housing conversation in a resort community, the Colorado ski towns are brought up almost inevitably. And they have, most of the ones that people point to, including Vail, have a real estate transfer tax that every time a house is sold, it generates money that is then used to fund housing. Unfortunately, in California, the Constitution does not allow us to have anything like that. So that big source of revenue that a lot of kind of our peer resort towns have is simply not available. So we could do something as you've suggested, but the money would have to come from the general fund, and we don't have the ability to raise funds in the same way that a lot of other towns do.
I mean, I think that being said, too, we also have opportunity in the housing element to look at this concurrent with what we're doing with our budget, because that was something that had come up from Mountain Housing Council, in addition to a housing by right zoning district, which is something else that Vail does too. So we had that in addition to ADUs and some other topics on our high list with short-term rentals and other things to look at within the housing element that was before we even got into the full public process for that. So I think we can keep that in that mix in addition to trying to look at what funding sources could be available.
Great, thank you. Jessica.
Yeah, I think I'm aligned with Morgan on this, where I'm not at a point without having more information about kind of all of our options available. I'm not at a point to say, yes, come back with options for deferring or waiving fees if there might be alternative solutions. So maybe if we can just get more information on what all alternatives we have, and then explore those options. Does that make sense? Am I being clear in my communicating my thoughts? Thank you. I'm not feeling very well this evening.
Yeah, no, and I think I can agree with all of that and really go along with what Danielle sort of explained, which is I think looking at it all as a bigger package through the housing element over the next 7 months, we need to sort of pick and choose rather than, sending staff down a very specific hole to come back with a very specific 1 or 2 bullet points. I think it's just a bigger picture, and we have to look at it like that and look at the policies that are going to make the most difference. So maybe rather than giving you that specificity that you asked for, Jeff, I'm a little bit more on sort of that bigger picture with Danielle and trying to talk about all of these things together as a menu of options and looking at how it affects the budget, how it gets projects on the ground, how we can take existing housing stock and actually get that into some deed restriction and trying to maybe hit on all of those at some level rather than going super deep into a single one. So that's kind of where I'm at as well.
Thank you, Dave. I think I second that. I think that's a good place to start, taking the big picture approach, which I think we're going to be doing through our process, and then homing in on specific perhaps specific directives. So, do you need any other comment? I think with that, it kind of wraps in the accessory dwelling unit idea, the deed purchasing idea, and so are you good with direction? Okay, so do we need a motion or a? Okay,
no motion.
Excellent. Okay, thank you again, Shauna, for all the work, and thank you everyone for your input. Okay, we'll move on to staff report item 7.4, which is amending section 9.14.030 of the municipal code regarding camping in public places.
And I'll start off with this one, and Chief Leftwich will then jump in. So we have an existing ordinance that prohibits camping, which is to say, sleeping in a sleeping bag or in a tent or anything like that on public property. Most cities in California have these. We have one too. Most of them are based on a 20-year-old California Supreme Court case that says that they're okay. Last year, a federal court of appeal, the Ninth Circuit, decided a case out of Boise, Idaho, and indicated that it's not permissible under the Eighth Amendment, which, as all of you remember from school, forbids cruel and unusual punishment. You can't cite people simply for being homeless, which, fair enough, I think most people have thought that. So what the Boise case says is that if you're going to cite somebody for camping or sleeping on public property, they have to sort of almost be there by choice. It has to be that they have a shelter option available and have simply chosen not to avail themselves of it. The case does go on to say that although you can't criminalize being camping or being homeless everywhere, it did say you could select certain areas where you could prohibit people from being. So what this draft ordinance does is it changes our ordinance to reflect what the court has indicated we can and cannot do. Now, Chief Leftwich will be able to explain why this doesn't really represent that much of a change in how we've enforced things. It doesn't represent a change in our practice. Truckee PD has never been one of the departments that is out there trying to remove people experiencing homelessness using criminal citations. It's just not something we do. So what this does is it clarifies that people will not be cited unless there is a shelter option available and they've chosen not to go. And it does spell out that people, notwithstanding that people simply cannot camp or sleep in a way that would block a sidewalk and cannot sleep or camp on the grounds of town-owned facilities. So not sidewalks, but like town hall or the depot. It doesn't say anything about parks, doesn't say anything about property the town doesn't own, just establishing those small restrictions and changing our ordinance to reflect what the case says. And I think Chief Leftwich can kind of explain what the department has done and will be doing.
Thanks, Andy. So this, again, as Andy articulated, this was never meant to be an ordinance that provided us some kind of hammer where we could criminalize people that were experiencing homelessness, but it provided us a tool. And the large motivation for it when we drafted the ordinance came out of really fire safety, and that is the people that were sleeping on public lands and maybe had warming fires or camping fires, cooking fires that we need to address. This gave us the ability to kind of contact them, identify them, and see if there were some services we could provide, which has always been and continues to be the emphasis of what our interactions are with the homeless community, was to, if they're willing, get them out of their current situation and trying to find some appropriate resources for them. So we've written very few criminal cites over the years. This doesn't really change too much operationally, yet we still want our ordinance to be consistent with best practice and current law. But we don't anticipate that this is going to take away some huge issue for us that we're not going to be able to address. Now, having said that, there are a couple hot spots in town that might pose a problem as we move forward, particularly with those that want to really put forth their right to do this. The post office on Deerfield could potentially be impacted by this, and we really have no legal means to remove somebody from there if they push the issue. And of course, for those cities that experience a lot of protests through Occupy movements, that's really gaining less popularity a few years ago. We certainly wanted to protect our public buildings so that we didn't have people camping in breezeways or council chambers or anywhere and claiming that that was something that was perfectly legal because it was public ground. So that was a lot of the impetus for the change. It's not an operational issue where we think we have some community impact that we're not going to be able to address now. So I'll leave that.
So to sum up, I mean, this is essentially, I think of this as a housekeeping measure, making as minimal changes as possible to an existing ordinance in a way that doesn't affect the PD's actual operating practice and complies with the direction from the courts.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Rob. Any questions from council? No? All right, we'll open this up for public comment. Seeing none, we'll close public comment, bring it back to council for discussion, deliberation, or a motion.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Rob. I would move that we introduce and waive the first reading of ordinance 2019-1, amending section 9.14.030 of chapter 9.14 of the municipal code.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jessica. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Or the amendment.
Oh, I see what happened. We have a resolution 01 and ordinance 01. Look at that. We're good.
So are we good? Okay. All righty. Now, I think one of the items we've all been waiting for, 7.5, Council Committee and Liaison Designations for 2019. And Judy, I believe you're going to help lead us through this.
Certainly. Good evening and thank you. We have a number of seats that council members, have the opportunity to designate folks to attend and participate on behalf of the town council. For some of the first group of organizations, there would be town committees, boards, and commissions. I've added the Transit Center Relocation Feasibility Study Committee from tonight as well. The second one are liaison positions. They're pretty much set for, pardon me, the mayor and vice mayor positions, but those are also up for your discussion. And then committees of regional interest that we serve on. Some are, we need representation on, others are more voluntary and that council's chosen to participate on. So there's a number of those that have been vacated after the election this year. And so those are highlighted there in yellow. There are a number of committee seats that we highlighted in the staff report to talk about. In addition to these vacancies would be the GPAC has a quorum of council members serving on it, and that can't happen. That just makes it a council meeting. So you need to decide who you want to be the representatives from this body to serve on that set. There is a committee that has not been very active recently, and that's the Visitor Center and Marketing Committee. Staff is going to re-engage that. It's a subcommittee of two, and the chamber members is all. And it will, they'll start renegotiating the contract for 2020. So it's a significant, it's a significant amount of work that you'll be looking forward in the next year to make those changes and review those contracts. So in addition, staff is recommending that you consider putting both a T-bid representative as well as that chamber and marketing person is kind of that same individual if you can, to help with the continuity. Although I believe that the T-bid meets during the day, which is a little more challenging for some folks, so it's something to think about. The transit, Nevada County Transportation Commission, their staff has some significant reasons for asking you to consider remaining or keeping the continuity of having Carolyn Wallace-Dee serve on that commission. And Dan will talk to that when I'm done with the remainder of this discussion. And the last specific committee we called out here, nope, that's it. So I apologize. Dan will take over from here to talk a little bit about the NCTC designation.
Sure. So the Nevada County Transportation Commission, it's a 7-member commission. It's made up of 2 representatives from Nevada County that they typically appoint from their Board of Supervisors, 2 at-large representatives that are also appointed by the Nevada County Board of Supervisors that are members of the public in somewhere in Nevada County, a representative from Truckee, a representative from Grass Valley, and a representative from Nevada City. So that's the 7-member makeup or 7-person makeup of that board. Historically, the town has had a sitting council member be the town's representative to that commission. The commission deals with transit funding allocation and also transportation funding allocation for large-scale transportation projects on the state highway system. The Mouse Hole project was a recent example of a project that got some money through NCTC. It's obviously the council's discretion as to whether, so Carolyn Wallace-Dee was the representative for the town for the last 12 years on that commission. It's obviously the council's discretion as to whether you would prefer one of you 5. You could appoint anyone in the community to that role. It could be one of you 5. It could be a staff member. It could be someone else in the community. We do have an ongoing project, I'll call it, with Nevada County, where we're trying to convince the county through the Transportation Commission to shift a few $100,000 of transit funding that's currently landing in Western County over here to Eastern County. So there's some studies that are in progress. We've been working with Carolyn on that. If the council thought that having continuity in our representation to the Transportation Commission, through appointing Carolyn was appropriate, that would avoid one of you all kind of jumping into the middle of this conversation about shifting transit funding from Western County to Eastern County, and would leave Carolyn in the role to help lead that effort for the town. So that's probably the hottest iron that we have in the fire with that particular appointment. Carolyn has indicated that she's willing to fulfill that role if you as a council would like her to. I think she's also would be fine if one of you all decided that it was more appropriate, or if you all collectively decided it was more appropriate for someone else to fill that role. But I'll leave it at that.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Judy, anything further? Or?
Lastly, I've put the whole list up here on in front of you, and we'll try and keep track of of the positions as you move them.
Well,
so I'll do the best I can with that.
Okay. I mean, it's impressive that in real time you added the transit center relocation row.
You gave me a 7-minute break.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, maybe we'll certainly open this up for council discussion here in a second. But I'm just thinking would make sense just to go down the list, straight on down, and then have discussion on each item. Sure. Does that sound good? Okay.
Can I ask a really quick question on just something else that we all got invited to as new council members, which is the Truckee Tomorrow Investor Group meeting, of which I know the town is probably an investor in that group, and then the chamber started throwing out all their invites. So just where does that all sit with that?
It's not a town.
It's not a
directly a town meeting. That's one that a number of us attend from time to time.
It's more of a voluntary invitation.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not something that, okay. Yeah. Just double checking there.
Thanks.
Okay. Who would like to start with the top one?
Well, I see no reason to change this one per se, but I'm open to conversation about it, assuming you're interested in continuing, David.
Yeah, I actually am interested in continuing, but I also, kind of looking down the list here, there are a lot of D's there in my column, quite a bit. I actually did a quick count here, 6 plus 2 alternates, so that's 8. We have 19, just in perspective here, we have 19 sort of different commissions or committee categories. So, and 5 of us. So, I know some of them, the designee, the mayor is by virtue of the role, a designee. But
Two of them have 2 designees, so it's really 21, right?
Oh, is it? Okay. All right.
21.
Yeah.
21 spots for 19.
Yep.
All I was going to say was, happy to, as we go through this, do whatever. Personally, and particularly some of the chamber stuff, the T-bid, the chamber liaison stuff, the really that whole category is a lot of things that I do sometimes already attend. And so if people wanted to come off of those, and I could take some of those, and others could do some other stuff. If some of you folks who've been on some of these committees for a long time want to switch it up, we can also have those conversations too. And then as it pertains to GPAC, I think, what are there, 4 of us? Right.
I'm okay with giving up my
Technically, there are
spot, 'cause I
currently
know
4
that
of us.
You
So
are interested in David's. I'm okay with.
right. So I'm definitely
relinquishing my
off. But
Yes,
and then
I'm very interested in serving on that.
Okay.
on what?
GPAC.
You're
and-
interested?
Yeah,
Good.
and Jessica's willing
I'm willing
to.
to give up that. I have my eye on the Truckee River Basin Water Group. I talked to Jeff about that today, and that sounded like it was an interesting one.
Good.
And then just quickly, so the commission is going to you recommended Jerusha. I saw that in the staff report, and then they'll choose an alternate out of their crew probably as well, because Nikki, I think, was also Nikki and Susie. Was Susie on the GPAC or no? No. So, but Nikki was, I think, right?
No,
she was.
Alexis.
Oh, Alexis is. Got it. Okay. So never mind. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So
sure, pass that off.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dave, for the consideration about the chamber and the T-bid. That seems aligned as a business owner, maybe a good match, right?
Yeah.
And then Jessica, if you're willing to give up the alternate position on the GPAC, then maybe it sounds like we've got the first one settled, and maybe some of the ones below as well.
I'm working on it.
Okay. All right.
So that's your first one. I see the T-bid. I removed Morgan. Now, I didn't hear from Morgan on that, so.
And yeah, I mean, if you guys want to stay on it, you're the senior council members here. So really, it's up to you guys if you want to move on to something else or not. So.
No, I'm happy with that. I think it's a good switch, to be honest. I would support you, Dave Polivy, to take those 2.
Okay.
What was the second one? The chamber?
There's actually 3. So
T-bid.
yeah, so there's excuse me. T-bid is here, chamber liaison, and then up here we have the marketing and visitor center.
Can you? So
I'm fine to
I have been on that committee historically, the Marketing and Visitor Services Committee, which hasn't met for 2 years. That was a great committee to be on. So you did just mention there's going to be more activity with that. Can you enlighten us as to what that might look like and when those meetings, just so we know what to expect with that committee. I'm not opposed to remaining on it, but I want to know what I'm signing up for with it.
Right. So do you want to, actually 2 members of this body are looked for in there, whether you stay on that or not, Jessica. That would meet with chamber staff to look at and renegotiate the visitor center contract that goes into effect in 2020. So over the next year, you'll review the contract, talk about what you think worked or didn't, or what you want to see or don't, and that type of thing, so that you can roll forward a new contract to implement in 2020. So there will be meetings and they will be scheduled, but it's really with that staff, and it can be at the will and pleasure as far as timing of the board, of the members. It's an agreed upon time, so.
Yeah, I'm okay staying on that
Okay.
as the second member.
All right. So that's Dave then and Jessica?
Yeah.
Okay. Sister City, that's the next one down. I'm the designee there, and Jessica, you're the alternate. The committee's been meeting now for, I don't know, 4 months or so, 4 or 5 months, and we're kind of right in the middle of things. And so I would like to stay on unless anyone. Okay. All right. Jessica, are you okay as the alternate?
I'd like to stay the alternate.
Okay, excellent. So that one we've got done. Reimagine Bridge Street. I think, Morgan, you're the designee.
Yep, and we may or may not be done depending on what council decides with our recommendations. So.
Okay. So you're staying on for now?
I'm staying on.
Okay. Transit Center Relocation Feasibility Study Advisory Committee. We've had about a good hour plus now to really ponder this one.
Dig deep.
Any thoughts floating to the surface on that?
Well, before I jump in on that one, I do have a particular interest in the Nevada County Local Area Formation Commission. So I just wanted to see if anybody else wanted to grab that one.
That's otherwise known as LAFCO.
Yes.
I do want to add that the Nevada County participatory items on here, the membership actually meet here in Truckee and video conference in. So really there's not, it used to drive down to Nevada City for every one of these. You go over to the Board of Supervisors office for the county here in Truckee and attend those meetings here. So it makes it a bit easier on you.
Great. So I was looking at that one in the Truckee River Water Basin, but Jessica, it sounds like you're interested in that. So if you want to take that one, I'll take the Transit Center too then.
Perfect.
Feasibility study then. Okay. Because we're just doing one on each of those, correct?
Great. Okay, so did we get the first block sorted? Committee? Great. And then well, I guess the next block is, it is what it is, correct? Okay, mayor, vice mayor, all right. Okay, the lower block then, regional interest committee seats. So we've got LAFCO sorted. What's that next one then again, Judy?
Nevada County Remote Access Network. Sorry.
Mayor every 3 years. Is this a lucky year for?
The 3 mayors attend, or the three mayors rotate that every third year. I think down here it says what year maybe.
Okay.
I think we're actually up.
Okay. So
And I don't have it here.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought we were up this year to sit on that. So, but I can find out for sure.
Okay, so.
But either way, it would designate a mayor.
Okay.
Or, yeah.
All right, so I guess that one's settled, huh? Okay. All right, mayor manager, I guess that one is clear. Transportation Commission. So, any feedback from council on that?
I think
Carolyn would be great.
I think that's unanimous.
Definitely.
Yep. Okay, so yes, Carolyn D. It sounds like she's willing and able and in the midst of it, so good recommendation. Glad that can work out. I think that'll be terrific. Truckee River Basin Water Group, I think Jessica, you'll be the designee. I actually was a designee for about 6 months, and then Patrick Flora took that. That's very, very interesting group.
Yes, I asked Jeff about it when we spoke earlier today. It sounded like it was a good fit.
Yep, and then the Airport Land Use Commission, I'm fine staying in that spot unless anyone's dying. I mean, it's pretty minimal at this point, but I don't think there's a requirement that is mayor or vice mayor or anything like that, right? It could be any council member. So if anyone has an interest in that, I'm happy to step off. Otherwise, I'm also happy to stay on that. Chamber, we got that. T-bid, that's settled. Nevada County Economic Resource Council.
I will share that I think that Morgan's been serving on it, felt that it's quite Western County centered. And I had a conversation after an email from Supervisor Anderson saying, yeah, that may be true, but he would really still like to see some representation from the town in there pushing for the town. So
And that's one that I have not been able to make a lot of time for. So if anyone's excited, I'm happy to give that up.
How often do they,
what's the
meet?
commitment on that one?
Yeah.
There we go.
And there also hasn't been a lot asked. So.
Okay.
Are there meetings set, Morgan?
No, I'm not sure what is actually expected of me on that one, to be perfectly honest. So that says a lot. I'm happy to stay on that and just circle up with Richard Anderson and kind of see what he sees as the opportunity that we should be taking advantage of.
I'm also happy to jump in on that one if you need to move on.
I think the one that I would be even more interested in handing off is the Mountain Housing Council, which when I first joined, the schedule worked out great, but taking 2 to 3 hours in the Friday morning is just not conducive to my work schedule, unfortunately. And I found that one tough. So if anyone wants, and David's kind of been serving as the delegate.
I've been going to many of those meetings. I'd be happy to step into that slot as the designee, unless anyone else has a burning desire to do so. There is an alternate.
Friday mornings?
For 3 hours. Well, it's quarterly, right?
Yeah, it's quarterly, and Friday mornings for 2 to 2.5, sometimes 3 hours. But the actual commitment goes way beyond that. But staff takes care of most of the way beyond that. But we do consult. Like I'll talk to David or Morgan from time to time, or Yumi will. But the formal commitment is the quarterly, and then there are these tiger teams or work teams that are a lot. But mostly staff takes care of those.
So why don't we make...
I can do the alternate if you want.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
You want to take the designee and start to rotate that through.
Yep. Okay. So we got that. And then the redevelopment successor agency, that was, Judy, the one that was going to meet this month. And that was going to be, I think, a conference call-in situation, right?
Yeah, once again, that's a Nevada County meeting that we'll go over to the Board of Supervisors office and do a web meeting.
And it is scheduled for Friday, January 25th. It looked like it got canceled, but it didn't.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
It's at 2 o'clock, I think, on Friday the 25th. And so you and Joan Jones are our two representatives.
Okay. Well, unless there's a mayor-specific requirement, I mean, I'd be willing to step off of that one just because of the other load with the other committees. So if anyone has an interest in that. So that is once, is that monthly?
So no, it happens twice a year. The Redevelopment Successor Agency Oversight Board will oversee any decisions made by the redevelopment successor agencies, which in Truckee's case is you. Grass Valley's case is the Grass Valley Council as well. And so right now, we're only meeting once a year for the ROPS. You'll discuss that after this meeting today. And then once for the budget in June. So really, it's meeting twice a year now.
Okay.
And yeah, I think there'll be a spooling up time where everybody gets a little educated, and that might take a little longer. But after that, those meetings go pretty quickly.
Okay. Any interest?
No, I'll take that.
Great. Thank you, Anna.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Okay.
And Judy, your Mountain Housing Council row, you can move the D over to the far right.
That's right.
Just making sure.
Okay. With that, I think we've got every box, every column, row addressed, correct? If I'm not mistaken. So at this point, I will, unless there's any other council comment or discussion, I'll open this up for public comment. Seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment, bring it back to council for final direction. And do we need we don't need a motion. Here's the list. All right. Great. Well, thank you everybody for stepping up to participate in these various committees, and yeah, I think we're in good shape.
So I will share that a couple of these committees have obligations for filing 700, some things like that, and other jurisdictions are involved. So we'll do the best we can to communicate with those organizations about who's serving and get you all up and educated on those.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, we have one last discussion item, and everyone okay? Any break? We're good? Okay, all right. We're almost there, so at least with this regular part of the agenda. So. Kim.
Thank you, Mayor Tierman. So this is a discussion about possibly updating our investment policy. As some of you are aware, we bring this to you annually as required by the municipal code. We primarily follow the state's requirements that are delineated in the government code in the state of California about what type of investments we do with the cash that we have on hand in the town. The main consideration is always to safeguard the capital. So we have a pretty restricted list of things that we can invest in. When we did this last year in June or July, Council Member Goodwin suggested that we might want to consider restricting our investments away from certain types of companies. And so that's what I've included here as some proposed additional language. And you've seen that included in a marked up draft of the investment policy. It would essentially, for the investments that we can direct, would exclude us from investing in companies whose primary businesses are fossil fuels or coal extractors, coal being a fossil fuel, but we're specifically calling out the coal extractors. I think I mentioned in my staff report there were 3 names that were available under our Chandler Asset Management Program that would go away. According to our folks at Chandler, with that restriction, they don't feel that we would be unable to continue to diversify our portfolio appropriately. So it's most likely there would not be a fiscal impact of doing this, and it would align this investment policy more closely with the council's thinking on the environment and our stewardship thereof. So that's all I have about that. Our proposed action is to consider approval of Resolution 2019-02, which is essentially reapproving the investment policy for the remainder of this fiscal year.
Thank you, Kim. Council questions?
I don't actually have any questions. I was just going to say thank you for doing the homework to bring this forward.
Same. I'm very excited about this policy. Thanks for bringing it forward, and I look forward to it.
Jessica or Dave?
I don't have a question. I did speak with Jeff and Kim earlier, just because I do happen to be an investment management professional in my everyday life. And so this one, of course, was aligned with my personal knowledge. And so I had a little bit of a concern thinking, gosh, what are we going to do if we're limiting ourselves to not have any investments in a specific industry? What if we're holding, for example, mutual funds, then we're going to be excluded from a vast array of investments? Kim provided me with this lovely list of what we are and are not allowed to invest in as a town municipality, and there are no mutual funds here. We're very, very conservative, and so with my experience and educational background, I'm also very comfortable with this. I don't think that we're going to have any sort of a negative financial impact, and I think it would be completely appropriate to take this action as far as sending a message that this is where our values are aligned.
All right. Thank you, Jessica. Nice to have financial advice expertise.
Saved all my energy the night for that.
Okay. All right. Okay. So why don't we go ahead? And I agree with everything I've heard here tonight. So I guess we're kind of borderline getting into discussion deliberation, but I'll go ahead and open. No, that's fine. We'll open it up for public comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to council for direction, deliberation, any further discussion. I think we have a consensus up here.
I think it's been said.
Yeah.
I would move Resolution 2019-02 to update our investment policy.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you. That'll be effective tomorrow, the way the resolution is written.
Excellent. Oh, I'm sorry, Kim. Is it a year-to-year update of investment policy, correct? Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, for people who can't see me shaking my head.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we'll move on then to council reports, starting with Councilmember Klobstad.
Well, it was the holidays, so of course I had to attend the Truckee Dance Factory Cracked Nut performance at Squaw Valley, which is phenomenal, in case you haven't been. Truckee High School Band winter concert and Truckee Donner Land Trust holiday party. But then I also really took advantage of the slow time and met with many of the town staff, Kim Zurich, Dan Wilkins, Jeff Lux, of course, to continue my education on the town of Truckee, which I have a lot to learn still, and I'm really, really appreciative to everybody's time and commitment to helping me get there. And then I enjoyed reviewing all 8 Planning Commission applicants, interviewing 6 of them, and finally landing with Susie Tarnay. So that was a very exciting process.
All right. Thank you, Anna. Morgan.
I've already told you about my couch surfing activism on Sunday. And other than that, I was visiting family in New York for 3 weeks. So just getting back into the swing of things.
Great. Jessica.
I was also on my personal vacation time, unfortunately, and then I fell ill traveling back, and so I've been in bed.
Oh, all right. We'll get better. Dave?
Yeah, mostly just working the past couple of weeks and entertaining all of our lovely visitors and locals alike over the holidays. So not a lot of official business as a new council person.
Okay. Thanks. I just have a few things. Sister City Committee met on the 17th of December, making progress. And Land Trust, there was a reception that I attended on the 18th of December. Anna, I saw you across the room, but you didn't see me. You were there. I did run into Jeff. And then the mayor's breakfast, mayors of Grass Valley, Nevada City met up at the Truckee Diner, Jeff, and we had a nice crew with some of their staff as well. And then, yeah, I think that's it. Wonderful holiday period, and I turned 1 year older on December 30th. So, yeah, not a good thing to report. So.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, I guess so. All right. So I think with that, we'll close the regular meeting. And do we have a? We'll go ahead and close, right? Okay. We're closed.
Now you're going to open the redevelopment successor agency.
Okay. We'll reopen the
right through this
redevelopment successor agency. And do we have?
You have a consent
Yes.
item, I
Okay.
believe. Don't they have a consent? You have a consent item.
Okay.
No, you can waive all that.
Okay. So.
You can go straight to public comment on items not on the agenda.
Okay, any public comment not on the agenda? No? Okay, I think we're good there. We'll close public comment and then go to the consent calendar. What do we need to do here? I'm looking for some guidance.
So the same as the council's consent calendar,
Okay.
it does, there's one item, so
Okay, the
does anybody
minutes.
have any comments to it or
Okay.
need any corrections or changes?
Yep.
Okay,
Only certain people can vote.
yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
so,
We will ask that Board Member Pallavi and Board Member Claustad recuse themselves from the minutes as neither of them were present in June at that meeting.
okay. So basically, we're just approving the minutes at this point. Okay, so any
public comment?
Any public
on the
comment?
consent?
See no public left. Oh, Susie, you're still here. Okay. No comment. Okay. All right. So we'll close public comment and go to
I'll move the consent calendar.
have a second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. All right. We had 3 ayes, 2 recusals, so I think we're good. Okay. All right. Well, anything else, Judy, on that? Are we good? All right. So we're going to adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
No, sorry.
Discussion item.
Now there's the one
What?
discussion item.
Oh my God. Okay. I am sorry. I'm looking at the wrong.
The ROPS.
Okay. Here we go.
Yeah, we have one discussion item.
Okay. Let's open our discussion item 6.1. Sorry.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Mr.
Christy.
Chairman, and good evening, members of the board. Tonight we have our annual recognized obligation payment schedule to present for approval. In a few slides, actually in 2 slides here, I will have another refresher on some acronyms that we can introduce you to, but this is a process that the Redevelopment Successor Agency goes through once a year to present and request funding for expenditures of the Redevelopment Successor Agency. So I've provided a little bit of history on the redevelopment agency, former redevelopment agency and redevelopment successor agency in your staff report. But the redevelopment successor agency was formed in 2012 when the former redevelopment agency was dissolved, at which time the agency had enforceable obligations that needed future funding. So the ROPS is the mechanism with which we request that funding from the county, which is funded with property tax increment from the properties within that former redevelopment area. So on the ROPS, I've tried to summarize what's on that very wide spreadsheet that's included in your staff report, but there are only a few items left on our ROPS at this point. We mainly are bond payments for the 2010 bond issuance that we did from the agency that funded multiple projects, including streetscape improvement projects, most significantly the Brickletown Streetscape Improvement Project. There's also a few other line items on the ROPS for bond-related services, including legal and financial advisory services, should we need to refinance, or some annual reporting that we're required to do to the IRS because of the type of bonds that we had issued, bond trustee fees for the reserve funds that we still have on hand, as well as town administrative cost reimbursement, which we are granted per the redevelopment law. And I wanted to note that all of these items have been included on the ROPS since the dissolution in 2012 and have been reviewed actually multiple times by the Department of Finance and approved on the annual ROPS since then. So nothing new has been added to the ROPS. It's all existing enforceable obligations. So how this works, and this is the quiz portion of tonight's meeting. So the ROPS not only needs approval by the Redevelopment Successor Agency Board, which is you all, but once we have that approval, then the ROPS is presented to the county-wide Redevelopment Successor Agency Oversight Board. And once we have that approval, by February 1st, we need to submit the ROPS to the Department of Finance. So this, through the state of California. So this ROPS is for expenditures that would start in July 1st of 2019 through June 30 of 2020, so for the next fiscal year. So our recommendation tonight is to adopt Resolution 2019-01, approving the ROPS for the period July 1/19 to June 30/20, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll open this up for board discussion. All right.
I just want to thank Kim Zurich for spending some time with me and putting some solid ground under me with this concept. And yeah, I guess we just keep going till we're done paying it off. 2040? Yeah.
All right, Dave or Jessica, anything? Okay, we'll open this item up for public comment. Susie, any? No? Okay. All right. We'll close public comment and seek board direction here. We have a resolution in front of us.
I move that we adopt Resolution 2019-01.
Thank you, Morgan.
Second.
Thank you, Dave. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you, Chrissy.
I would just add one comment for future thought, and that is, it is not unlikely that in the next year or so, the state of California will reintroduce some kind of redevelopment. It'll probably have a different name, and it won't look quite as robust or grand, perhaps, but there's something that will look a lot like redevelopment. So we may be back in the redevelopment business, or at least contemplating that business within the term of this council.
Are you hearing rumblings from the
There have been quite a few rumblings from the legislature, mm-hmm. and the early indications from the governor's office, sort of pre-January, were that would be open to that. Mm-hmm. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Could be interesting.
While we would fervently hope that we would never do a ROPS again, we don't think that will go away, unfortunately.
No, unfortunately.
Yes.
And may not be able to be wrapped into some other financial tool. But anyway, it's something to think about.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. All right. With that, I think it's now safe for me to adjourn this meeting, correct? Okay. Thank you.
Excellent work.